So to execute statements multiple times, we can use something called a while loop. I'm going to make a while demo. I'm going to call it while demo 1 because I think we're going to have several demonstrations to do this. And so let's say that we wanted to print hello 10 times. Well, one way we can do this is we could say, well, let's start with let's do this. Let's flowchart this. So this time I'm going to do a flowchart with a Lucid chart, just to show some variation. And you go to Lucid chart. Once you make an account, you click on Documents, and we're going to make a new document, blank document. And it gives us a page where we can design some things. So let's put up a start. And what we're going to so if we're going to do a loop, we need some kind of loop control variable, something that keeps track of how many times we've done this. So maybe I'll call it count, and I'll say count equals 0 to begin with. And then what we'll do is we're going to have a decision. We're going to say, let's say we want to do something 10 times. If count is less than 10, then what we're going to do is, let's say we're just going to print hello. And what we do is, unlike an if statement, which would then, if we did an if statement, we would go down here and we would stop. We'd only do something one time. With a loop, what we do is we actually we have to come back around. Well, if we did this, this would be an infinite loop because 0 will always be less than 10. So how do we deal with that? Well, what we can do is we'll actually put another process in here. And we will say count equals count plus 1. And really, actually, the way this should work is maybe more like this, because we want to start off with this one going in here. We're going to say count is equal to count plus 1. And then we're going to loop back in here. So let's compress this up a little bit and make this look decent. So here's our process. We start, we initialize count to 0. We check to see if it's less than 10. Initially it is. We're going to output hello. We're going to add 1 to count. Count will now equal 1. 1 is less than 10. We'll print hello. We'll add 1 to count. And then we'll come back around. It'll be 2. 2 is less than 10. And we'll keep looping through this. So this is our loop. And we'll keep going through this. Eventually, count will become 10. 10 will not be less than 10. And at that point, what we're going to do is maybe say goodbye, and then we'll be done. So that's our this is the loop we're going to create here. We're going to start. We're going to initialize a variable to 0. We're going to keep looping around, and our control variable here for count, for the loop control variable, will keep incrementing that until it becomes 10, at which point we'll be done, and then we'll stop. So let's see if we can make that happen. So I'll put my code here. I'll put this over to the side. Get myself some more real estate. And now I'm going to write my pseudocode for that. So I'm going to initialize count to 0. I'm going to then while count is less than 10, loop. And then in here, what I'm going to do is say hello. And then down here, once we're done with that, we're going to say goodbye. And now we can write our code. Count is equal to 0. And the way we structure the while statement is we do it this way. You have while, and then in here we have some logical expression. So everything that comes after, and then we have a colon. So everything between the while and the colon in this spot right here is a logical expression, just like our if statement. And in this case, our logical expression is count less than 10. As long as this is true, then the next statement that's tabbed in will be done. So what we want to have happen is, as long as that's true, is we want to print hello. And then we need something to change our loop variable. If we don't, this will be an infinite loop. And I'm going to demonstrate that. I'm actually going to run this as it is. And let's see what happens. And you can see it. It just keeps running. It's saying hello, 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 hello. Because we're not modifying count, every time it gets around back up here and checks count, it's less than 10. Because we haven't modified count. It's 0. So how do we fix that? Well, looking at our code here, we say count is equal to count plus 1. So if I do this, count equals count plus 1, let's see what happens now. It prints 10 times, and then it stops. In fact, we can show that it stops. We'll just say print goodbye. And we'll run it again. And there you go. After the 10th one, it says goodbye. In fact, we can do something like this. We can display count in here with making it a format string, and see what the count is as it runs. I don't want the number. Let's do it this way. Looks better. Hello, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Why does it start at 0? And this is, often what we find with programming is we're often dealing with zero-based things, but the user we would probably prefer to see ones-based thing. And how could we fix that? Well, actually, we could fix that by just taking this and you know, and putting that up here. So we'll do the count increment first. That way when it displays, it'll look more like this. But we can see it's printing 10 times and then saying goodbye. So this works. Let's say we wanted to do 5 times. Well, we just put 5 here. Now we have 5 times. Could we get that number in from the user? Absolutely. We could do this. Ask user for number of hellos. And we could say num hellos is equal to integer. We're going to use an integer because you can't, when you're doing loop, you know, something like this, you can't have half of an instance. And so input, you know, how many hellos? Question mark. And then now, rather than 5, we can use this variable. And so this is our code now. And we could even update this. You know, we could let's move this down a little bit, move that down a little bit, see if we can get some room. And then here we'll add and then we will count less than, and then so this changes here. And that's the only changes. So that's what we've done. We've got num hellos up here, and then we got the number of hellos here. And now what will happen is it'll actually ask us, how many hellos? Let's say I say 3. I get 3. Run it again. Let's say 5. I get 5 of them. So now we have control over how many times we do something. Now there's a better way of doing this with a for loop we're going to see later. Normally a while loop is actually used when we don't know how many times we're going to run initially. So, but it can be used this way. Let's try a different scenario. And so I'm going to make while demo 2.py. And we're going to say number to guess is equal to 7. And then we're going to say something like this. And so we're going to do this. We're going to say establish number to guess. And then we're going to while not guessed, ask user to guess again. And so we're going to ask a number between, we're going to make it not too hard, 1 and 10. This is going to be the most amazing game ever. It's, you know, no one's going to want to play any 3D video games anymore. This is going to be so awesome. So we're going to ask the user to guess a number between 1 and 10, and then while they haven't guessed the correct number, we'll just keep looping, and then we will say congratulations. We'll give a congratulatory message, and then maybe say goodbye. And really, we should probably have, you know, header explaining what this is. So we're going to print our header, right? You know, welcome to Super Guess Game 3000, the best guessing game in the world. And let's just do that first, make sure I wrote that print statement correctly. Even if it's just a simple piece of code, I like to test it as I write my code, just to make sure that, you know, that's not providing me a problem. So I've got two statements here. We'll run it if we can get it to run. There we go. So we have welcome to Super Guess Game 3000, best guessing game in the world. We've got, okay, so that looks like that's working pretty well. Maybe I'll just temporarily put a print number to guess here. I mean, this is kind of overkill, but just to kind of show the programming process. We can see, okay, yeah, that did initialize a 7. I'll get rid of this temporary print statement, and now we'll do my while statement. So while, so I need a number to begin with. So this creates a problem. It's like I need a number to compare, but I don't have one yet. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this twice, and then I'll show you how we don't have to do this twice. But initially, we do need to get a number from the user. And it'll be, we're going to make it an integer just to make sure that the, you know, we're not guessing 7.125 or 7.3 or whatever. So we'll say int input, please guess a number between 1 and 10. And I'll put inclusive just so that they know that 1 and 10 is also a possible guess. And then we'll say while, and the logical test is while num does not equal, so the exclamation point equal is the equivalent of not equal, a number to guess, then we're going to do this again. And so let's run that. And so let's see, I know what the number is, but I'll just demonstrate, you know. Then, you know, so this keeps looping around, and then I guess the number. Now, what's the difference between this one and the other program we did? The other program we did, actually, we knew it was going to always run exactly the number of times that the user put in initially. This one is going to run until the user guesses that number. So this could run any number of times, and then finally you would get the answer. So this is actually where the while statement excels. When you don't know how many times it's going to run, but you're going to keep running until a condition is met, until this logical expression right here, this thing that returns true or false, evaluates to true, then, or evaluates to false, then it will drop out and stop. And since we know that you can't get through this while loop until you guess the right number, we don't have to put any kind of weird if statement thing in here. We know that right in here is where we can say, congratulations, you guessed the number. And then we will print our, you know, thank you for playing what did I call it? Super Guess Game 3000. The best guessing game in the world. Always want to thank your customer for using your product. It's good marketing. So, okay, so now I put 3, I put 5, I finally put 7. Congratulations, you guessed the number. Thank you for playing Super Guess Game 3000, the best guessing game in the world. Lots of exclamation points to express excitement over this amazing game. And we can see, okay, now we have, a decision-making loop in here, and this works, quite well. But we have this thing. We had to put this in twice. Is there some way of doing this so we only do it once? Now, other programming languages have a do while, and you can put the while at the end of the expression, but you can't do that in Python. And they chose not to provide that because the idea of Python is to kind of keep it simple. So we just have this while statement. Well, one way you could actually handle that is you could say, you know what, let's just put a wrong answer in here, and it'll just ask. And it will, it'll come in here and num will be 0. It won't be the right answer. And then it'll ask the question. So here now we've gotten rid of that option. And so sometimes, especially in this case, you can just kind of you can initialize something to something that will be false here, and that will allow the loop to start. And then now, we can, guess a number. The other thing is, we could make this game a little bit maybe better. By putting things in here that, tells the person how close they are to the answer and stuff like that. But, like we could say print we'll do the format, your guess was num, say number to guess, we'll do absolute. Number to guess minus num away from the answer. Of course, kind of makes it a little bit too easy. But, you can do things like that. Or you could, maybe you could say if it's less than or greater than. There's other things you could kind of do in here to make this a little better. But, or make it a more interesting game. But in any case, the key is you use this while statement, and if you want to not have to do this statement multiple times, you might be able to initialize it to a value to not do that. Another way we could do this is what we call the while true idiom. And in this one, I'm going to take the same code. And what we do is we actually say while true. We just take this out to keep it simple. And this is actually an infinite loop. In fact, I'm going to comment this out for a second and just say print hello for a second, just to show you what happens. So I'll run this, and you see if you have a while true, we get an infinite loop. Well, how do we break out of that? Well, okay, going back to our program that we had before, we're getting a number. We actually use an if statement, and we can say if num equals number to guess, there's a special command called break. And what break does is it basically just breaks out of the loop. And you can put this anywhere you want. So if you want to move your logical expression from the beginning to somewhere else in your code, you use this if statement and then you use a break. So you put an if statement in here and then use a break. So we can use both of these together to kind of change where that logical check is done. And so now, our code works pretty well and avoids us from having to input things multiple times. And because we're doing it this way, we don't need this init. We don't need to initialize this variable num to some value before we get into the loop, because it's not going to use that until we actually initialize it with this input here. So we can get rid of that other statement, and it cleans. And often this while true idiom, this while true approach, cleans up the look of your code quite a bit. And so we'll try that again just to prove that it's still working. And so this is another way of putting of making your loop and breaking where you want. Now, another example we're going to do is called the do another loop, and this is often used very, very frequently to wrap your entire program so the user can run the program multiple times. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to use that while true approach, and basically what we want to do is do something until user says they are done, and I'm just going to say print. So we're going to do something, and we'll just use a print statement. This could be wherever you're, this is where you're going to put something in here that does something cool, and then you're going to ask the user if they are done. And so you'll say do another typically is the name of the variable we'll typically say, and we'll say input do another. And usually we ask them to just put y or n in a console application. And the reason is we don't want them to have to type too much for this. Put a question mark, close it up, and then if do another is equal to no, then we'll break. Now, there's a couple ways of doing this. You can say if do another equals no, but if they accidentally type, something else, it depends if you want to bias this to, it'll only do another if you say yes, or it'll only stop if they put n. Probably, so this could work fine. So if they put in n for no, that means we're going to break out of this loop. And then so, we'll say goodbye. Print, or I'm going to say, thank you for using my program. And so if I run this, let's see what it does. Do Do another. Every time I hit yes, it'll keep going, but then if I put no, it'll stop. So this can be very useful with, maybe you can look at another program we did. Maybe with isNumeric. So we have this whole program that's isNumeric. I'm going to make a new program called isNumeric with do another. And so we can we'll take this version of isNumeric, and I need that to be .py. And then what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this with our do another approach. So we're going to take that first part and put it in front here. And then I'm going to take all of this code here and tab it in one so that it is inside this while block. And then at the end of it, this goodbye message really should not be tabbed in. I'm going to dedent that. So this is where our loop should end. And then I'm going to take this part where we check the do another question, or ask the do another question, and put that in here. So this is, we've basically taken the code that we made before, that we want to happen multiple times, and we put that in here. We put the do another question here, and we have a while true here. And so now this will keep running until we're done. And so let's try this one now. isNumeric and positive. Do another, yes. And this is kind of weird. I include, and this is something that you always find is, oh, I shouldn't have put this inside of the loop. So I'm going to take that and put that out here. So you can put things inside and outside of the loop. You have to change, fix the indentation when you do that. So now, yeah, now we'll do the header, and then we'll go into the loop. And it says, welcome to my program. Oh, welcome to my program. Please enter a number. Put 7. Is numeric positive? Do another? Yes. Not numeric? Yes. Please enter a number. 12. Numeric positive? Yes. Numeric negative. Do another? No. And we can stop. So often in many of your programs, you kind of want a do another loop. You're often going to have a header at the beginning, explain what's going on. You're going to have a loop. You're going to do you're going to do most of your code inside of the loop. You're then going to ask if they want to do another. You're going to break out if they say no, and print a goodbye message at the end. And you're going to find that that's in console applications where you're interacting with the user, that happens a lot. So that's a good while structure to remember. So that's the while loop. And to review, we started off with just a simple while loop demo where we asked the user how many times they wanted to print out some hellos. We initialized a variable for count to 0. We then looped through until the count was, equal to the number of hellos. It stopped, and then it printed goodbye. So that's one way of using a while loop. Is remember, you always have to have something that changes the value inside the while loop to make it so that it actually makes this logical expression between the while and the colon become false at some point in time, so it will actually stop the loop. Otherwise, you have an infinite loop. And then we made that a little bit more sophisticated. We made our amazing guess a number game. And what makes this a little different is, of course, that it can run any number of times. We don't really know ahead of time how many times this is going to run. It's just going to run until the person guesses the number. And, the key here is in order to not repeat the ask function, we initialize this to a value that was going to make this expression true to begin with, which in this case, because it's a not equals, it's actually, when this number is 0, it is true that number 0 is not equal to the number of the guess, which is 7. So it'll run the first one, ask the user for the number, and then it keeps looping until this whole statement becomes false, i.e. when they guess 7, it is not true that 7 does not equal number to guess. So you remember, you often have to deal with these double negatives and triple negatives when you're writing code. And then we print congratulations, you guessed the number once they guessed the correct number. Now note the similarity between the while and if statement. The if statement has a logical expression, but it only executes one time. The while statement keeps executing until the statement becomes true. And then we saw the while true idiom, which kind of cleaned up their code a little bit we're just going to make this an infinite loop, but we're going to put inside here an if statement that checks out, that actually checks our condition somewhere else rather than always at the beginning. This now is checking the condition at the end. And, you could put it anywhere in your code. So if you have multiple statements in here, where it makes logical sense, you can put this if statement to break out of the code. So the break statement is what breaks out of the loop. By the way, you can also write it this way to make it all one line. If statements can either have a block of code after it, or it can have one statement all in the same line. And sometimes you'll see it this way, and it makes it a little bit cleaner. And then we saw how to do a do another. And again, this probably makes it even, more concise and cleaner to see what's going on. And then we we saw how this gets used a lot in programs, and we saw how we could take a program we did before, drop the part that we want to repeat inside of the while true, and then have our do another break at the end, so that we could execute this program as many times as the user wants to execute. And that's something that gets used a lot. So that's how we use while statements. Thank you very much.